Hello friends, welcome to Behind the Shadows, a new way of telling stories.
The sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a pattern of shadows and light on the dirt path leading to the old farmhouse. Emily and Jake were enchanted by the rustic beauty of the place. The structure, with its weathered wooden walls and windows framed by wildflowers, seemed straight out of a fairy tale. However, there was something in the atmosphere that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "Don't you feel that?" she asked in a low voice. Jake, with a carefree smile, replied, "I just feel the fresh breeze. Let's go inside." As they crossed the front door, a musty smell of mold and old wood enveloped them. The interior of the house was as charming as the exterior, adorned with period furniture and details that spoke of a forgotten past. While Jake lost himself in admiration, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. "It's like the house has a life of its own," she said hesitantly. "You're just letting your imagination run wild," Jake countered, trying to soothe her. During their organizing, as they packed boxes and arranged furniture, Jake decided to explore the basement. "I'm going to take a look down there. It might be interesting," he said excitedly. Emily hesitated, recalling the neighbor's warning. "That basement is off limits. Don't go down there." "Maybe we should just leave it alone," she suggested, a hint of worry in her voice. But Jake's curiosity was greater. "I'll just take a peek. Don't worry, I'll be fine." When Jake found the locked door, excitement surged through him. "Look, a door. What do you think is behind it?" He began fiddling with the lock while Emily watched with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Jake, please don't do this," she implored, her voice trembling. What if they really locked something away for a reason? Ignoring her warning, Jake insisted, "Just a minute. I promise. I just want to see." With a determined shove, he forced the door open, which creaked and finally revealed the darkness of the basement. The dim light from Jake's flashlight illuminated the space, revealing dusty objects and strange symbols on the walls. At the back, something caught his attention. A metal cell with heavy chains that seemed to have been left behind by generations. "Emily, come here. You have to see this," he said, his voice filled with excitement mixed with a hint of apprehension. Emily, hesitant, took a step forward, but as she looked at the cell, a chill ran down her spine. "Jake, this doesn't feel right," she whispered, as an oppressive silence fell over them. What had they unleashed? In the days that followed their discovery of the basement, the atmosphere in the house seemed to change. Emily and Jake, who had initially been excited about the move, began to feel the weight of the night's silence. As darkness settled in, the whispers and thuds coming from the basement became more pronounced, as if the house itself was trying to communicate with them. "Did you hear that again?" Emily asked one night, her anxious gaze fixed on the door leading to the basement. She was sitting on the couch, hands clasped together, trying not to show the fear that consumed her. Jake, absorbed in a movie, simply shook his head. "It's just the house settling, Em. Old houses make noise. We can't panic over a few creaks." But Emily wasn't convinced. "It's not just creaks, Jake. There are whispers. I feel like someone or something is down there." "Maybe we should call someone to investigate," she suggested, insecurity lacing her voice. "And listen to the neighbors' legends? That doesn't make sense." "Let's just leave it alone," Jake replied, his tone more defiant than certain. "We just need to get used to the place." Tension grew between them, but what worried Emily most was Jake's increasing obsession with ignoring the signs. One night, while Jake was distracted in the living room, she felt an irresistible pull toward the sounds echoing from the basement. With a mix of curiosity and dread, she decided to go down alone. Each step toward the door felt like it weighed a ton, but something urged her on. When she opened the basement door, a wave of cold air enveloped her. "Jake!" she called, her voice trembling. Darkness swallowed her, and the whispers intensified, as if she had crossed an invisible line. Heart racing, Emily found the empty cell. Panic surged through her as she realized something was watching her from the shadows. With a stifled scream, she sprinted back upstairs, the sensation of being followed almost unbearable. "Emily, what happened?" Jake asked, concerned as he saw her breathless. "It's empty, and I feel like something was there," she replied, words spilling out in a torrent. "We need to do something, Jake. I can't live like this." Jake hesitated, skepticism beginning to waver in the face of Emily's terrified gaze. "Maybe we should investigate further, but what if it's just your imagination?" "It's not. I feel like we're in danger," she insisted, the urgency in her voice making Jake realize that perhaps his denial wasn't enough to protect them. He finally saw that the situation required more than just ignoring their fears. Jake woke from a nightmare, heart racing and breath hitching. He was lying in bed, but the image of the shadowy figure still lingered in his mind. It was an unsettling presence, whispering his name in a soft, seductive tone. He turned to the side, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. The room was dark. The only light filtering through the curtains was from the moon. He decided he wouldn't tell Emily about his nightmares. What she didn't know wouldn't frighten her. But at the same time, she felt that this decision was beginning to affect her behavior. The next morning, as Emily prepared breakfast, Jake watched her, trying to maintain normalcy. But the shadow of his unease followed him like a ghost. "Are you okay, babe?" Emily asked, glancing over the stove. "You look tired." "Just a rough night," he replied, trying to smile. "Nothing a good cup of coffee can't fix." Emily frowned but didn't press further. She decided she needed to investigate the history of the house, something that had intrigued her ever since they found the locked door. Once the coffee was ready, she sat down at the table and said, "Jake, I'm going to the library today. I want to learn more about the former owner. Maybe he left some records behind." "Why is that important?" Jake questioned a bit nervously. "Because something doesn't feel right here, Jake. The noises, the cell, all of this can't just be a coincidence." He shook his head, trying to steer the conversation away. "I think we're just letting our imaginations run wild. This place is old, and old stories tend to be exaggerated." But as he spoke, a sense of dread settled in his chest. That night, when they decided to go down to the basement again, the atmosphere felt heavier than ever. Emily squeezed Jake's hand, her expression anxious. "Are you sure we should do this?" "We need to face this once and for all," Jake replied, forcing himself to sound resolute. As they descended the stairs, the air seemed colder, and the lantern's light flickered as if hesitating to illuminate the path. Once they reached the bottom, an oppressive feeling enveloped them. Shadows danced on the walls, and the silence was deafening. Suddenly, the lantern lights flickered and went out. The darkness was palpable, and they could hear a low, sinister laughter echoing around them, as if something was enjoying their fear. "Jake, what was that?" Emily whispered, her body rigid with fear. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," he replied, his voice trembling. The presence that surrounded them seemed to close in, and Jake felt that more than ever, they were in a deadly game with something they couldn't comprehend. The atmosphere in the basement was thick and stifling, as if the walls were closing in around Emily and Jake. As soon as the door slammed shut by itself, a chilling cold spread through Jake's body. He pulled on the doorknob with all his strength, but the door wouldn't budge. "Emily, it's locked. What are we going to do?" His tone was a mix of panic and urgency. "Jake, calm down. Let's think," she replied, trying to control her racing breath. The echo of distant laughter reverberated in the shadows, making the hair on their arms stand on end. "We need to find a way out." "Look!" Jake exclaimed, pointing to a dusty corner of the basement. There was a shelf filled with objects covered in a layer of dust. He approached, pushing some things aside until his hands brushed against a thick book, its cover worn and pages yellowed. "A spell book. Maybe there's something here." "This is crazy, Jake." "We don't know what we're doing," Emily said, fear mingling with a strange fascination at the discovery. Her eyes locked onto the book Jake was holding. "Don't you think this could make things worse?" "We have to try something. We can't stay here forever," Jake insisted, flipping through the pages. The whispers grew louder, almost as if the creature itself was enjoying the situation. "Look, here's a spell to trap entities. We need a protection circle." Tension mounted as Emily glanced around, the feeling of being watched intensifying with every passing second. "Jake, Don't forget we're dealing with something much stronger than us. We can't underestimate it. He paused in his reading, looking at her with concern. Are you okay? You don't seem like yourself. I don't know. It's like something is calling to me, she confessed, her voice trembling. I feel like I'm losing control. The shadows around them seemed to stir, and a low, sinister laugh echoed again, making Jake's heart race. We need to act fast. If the creature manifests, I don't know if we can protect ourselves. As Jake focused on the words of the spell, the entity's presence became tangible. He could feel the air growing colder, making everything even more surreal. Emily, stay close to me. We need to do this together. I'll try, she replied, the hesitation still visible in her eyes, but there was a glimmer of determination starting to shine through. The fight for survival had begun, and the creature in the darkness was eager to play with them. Jake sat on the cold basement floor, surrounded by old, dusty objects and the musty smell that filled the air. The spellbook rested on his lap, its yellowed and worn pages seeming to tell stories of unimaginable horrors. He tried to concentrate, but the creature's presence felt more intense with every second. The whispers that had once been distant murmurs were now clear and penetrating, echoing in his mind with a disconcerting insistence. Jake, you shouldn't be here. Emily's voice sounded like a lament. She was leaning against the wall, her eyes wide, her expression a mix of fear and confusion. It knows about me. He looked up, alarmed. What do you mean by that? What does it know? Emily hesitated, her voice trembling. The creature. It's as if I have a connection with it. Sometimes I feel like it wants to tell me something I can't quite understand. That can't be true. It wants to hurt us, not help you, Jake replied, his voice heavy with desperation. He stood up, moving closer to her. We have to focus on finding a way out. We have to stop this before it's too late. As Jake tried to calm her down, the creature manifested, its shadows dancing on the walls of the basement. A biting cold enveloped the space, and a sinister laugh echoed, making both of them shudder. You can't escape, Jake. It has already seen what you fear. The entity's voice seemed to come from everywhere, like a wind carrying pain. Emily, in her state of confusion, looked at Jake, anguish in her eyes. What if it's right? What if I'm connected to something larger than both of us? No, don't think that way. We're a team, Emily. Jake grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. We need to fight against this together. With great effort, Emily shook her head, trying to push away the dark thoughts. I don't know if I can, Jake. With each passing day, I feel like I'm losing myself. It's as if something inside me is becoming part of her. No, you can't give up, Jake exclaimed, frustration evident in his voice. We need to find a way to trap her again. The book might help us, but you need to be by my side. What if I can't? Emily asked, tears filling her eyes. What if the creature has already won? I won't let that happen. We will get through this, Jake replied, determination growing within him. We'll do this together until the end. As they exchanged intense glances, the creature roared, and the air became even heavier, as if it knew the battle was just beginning. Jake was resolute. The ritual he had found in the ancient book might be their only chance to save themselves. With a determined look, he turned to Emily, who stood before him, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and confusion. Emily, I need you. You have to help me do this, he said, his voice trembling with urgency. She hesitated, the creature's influence still wrapped around her like a dense fog. But something within her began to push back. Jake, I don't know if I can. The creature, it calls to me. I feel like part of me wants to stay, Emily replied, her voice almost a whisper. You're stronger than this. Remember what we are, what we have. I can't do this without you, Jake insisted, taking her hands. The connection between them was intense, and he tried to convey his determination. Let's put an end to this together. With a monumental effort, Emily took a deep breath. Okay, what do you need me to do? Jake opened the book and began to recite the words of the ritual. his voice echoing in the shadowy basement. As the incantations unfolded, the atmosphere around them grew heavier. The shadows on the walls seemed to stir, and the creature began to manifest, a distorted and menacing form writhing in the darkness. "Jake, I can feel it coming closer," Emily shouted, her voice filled with panic. "Look at me, Emily. Focus on me," he commanded, his tone firm. "We're almost there." The moment the last words of the spell left his lips, the creature, in a final act of desperation, revealed its true form. It was a grotesque figure, with piercing eyes that seemed to know all the darkest secrets of the house. A deafening roar echoed through the basement, and Jake and Emily felt the pressure around them intensify. "No, we won't let you defeat us," Jake shouted. With a surge of strength, Emily finally found the clarity she needed. "I refuse to be yours," she yelled, joining her voice with Jake's. Together, they channeled all the energy of the ritual, and the creature began to writhe, unable to withstand the power that now surrounded it. A blinding light illuminated the basement, and in a moment of absolute silence, the malevolent presence was sucked back into its cell. The door slammed shut with a bang, and the heavy atmosphere began to dissipate. Breathless and exhausted, Jake and Emily threw themselves into each other's arms, holding on tightly. "We did it. We did it," Jake murmured, feeling the adrenaline start to fade. But as the sense of relief enveloped them, a shadow of worry crossed Jake's face. "Emily, what if it's not over? What if the creature is still connected to you?" She looked at him, confusion starting to fade. "What do you mean?" Jake hesitated, but the truth needed to be spoken. "I found out you're a descendant of the former owner, the creature. It may have a connection to your past. You could be linked to all of this in some way." Emily's eyes widened, and a new wave of panic washed over her. "So what do we do now? How do we get rid of it for good?" "I promise I will protect you, no matter what happens. Together we will face any shadows from the past," Jake declared firmly, cradling her face in his hands. There, in the darkness of the basement, they vowed not to let the horrors of the past tear them apart. The battle had been fierce, but their bond was stronger. And even though the echoes of the creature might still whisper in their minds, they were ready to face the future together.
Leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy and see other stories on the channel. See you in the next story, if you dare.